Let's see, let's do this. There we go. Damn it. Let's see. I need to go to my courses. This is section 9. Mm, 90 seconds. You'll hear all the construction on the science building. It's crazy. It's gonna be kind of aggravating this morning. Loud. Here comes somebody. Another minute. All right, 30 seconds. Get out the way. Jesus. Okay, it is now 10 o'clock. Good morning, everybody. Today is Wednesday, April 21st, 2021. And you guys are biology 11 1161 section 90. I keep getting interrupted from the workers working on the roof, and it sounds like they're right on top of my head, but anyway. So today's our last lab before your practical next week. So yeah, next week your final practical, and semester's over. So today we're going to go over the last bit of material. Here's all your table of contents. We're just going over the images, right? And as far as the material, again, you click on material. It's these three handouts, and we started the digestive urogenital handout last week, and so we did the digestive stuff, and I think endocrine, and then so today we're going to pick up on the urogenital. So you click on that, and you'll see this, right? So there's that, and so this bit of material here, which probably won't take an hour to do, but we'll do that. And correspond with those are the images. So I'm going to click over here, images for practical 3, right here, do this kind of deal. Let's put that over there. And scooch this right here. Make this a little bit longer like that. Make this one a little bit longer like that. Yeah, that's good. And have a gander at the urogenital stuff, urogenital system. And remember, urogenital is urinary and reproductive. So we have urinary structures and so forth. So let me scroll down, be the last images down here, beginning with the images of the kidneys and so forth. Down, down, down. I think we had a kidney right here. Yeah, there's just one little kidney right there. So, and then, well, you see that's a kidney and that's a ureter, right? That's what carries blood, urine to the bladder, and there's another one right there. But I think the main one I would use to ask you questions is like right here. So I think where everything's labeled pretty much, the right kidney, which is sectioned open, left kidney is intact. Of course, there's the ureters right there. And of course, if you follow the ureters down, they're going to go to the urinary bladder. And so, there's a ureter right there. It's connected to the bladder. It's the male bladder. Little bitty, cute little female bladder right there. And that hurts her ureter right there. And just, you can imagine it's tapping into the opposite side. There's the male bladder intact. Male bladder opened up. Female bladder intact. Don't confuse it with the uterus. There's the uterus, that's the bladder. There's the female bladder opened up again. Okay, so just be familiar with all that. And then urethral orifices, that's where the ureters open up. You can't see that, it's not pointed out, but if you looked inside the hollow part of the bladder, you'd see like right there, you can see a little bitty hole. That's a ureteral orifice, okay? And then the female, look, I got female urethra, then I have prostatic urethra, membranous urethra, and penile or spongy urethra. And each of those last 3 things are followed by an asterisk, and that's to let you know that's a male only thing. And so the male's urethra is divided into 3 parts. We have different names for it. The female doesn't have anything like that. So let's look at the female urethra. So it drains the bladder. Of course, the best way to see it is sectioned open like this. Here's the bladder, and there's a little tube that drains the urine to the outside of the body right there. In the little space right there, we're going to call it the vestibule, the pudendal vestibule, okay? So there's the female urethra. Now to see the males, you look at it sectioned open. Let's see, prostatic urethra, that's just the part that goes through the prostate gland. You can see the prostate gland right there. And right here, well, here they call it it says urethra, then in parentheses, in prostatic segment. That's the same thing, but I wouldn't call it that. I would call it the prostatic urethra, okay? Like on your test. So name this structure. Is it the membranous urethra, prosthetic urethra, or penile urethra, or spongy urethra? They don't label the membranous urethra, but that's the little part that goes through this muscle right here on its way to the penis. And you just can't see it. If I talk about that in lecture, you'll see that in lecture, my lecture anyway. And then the penile or spongy urethra, well, it takes over right here. Let me click on this. I don't know if it's this, it's not this slide, I guess. But you can see the urethra in the penis, all right? That's the penile urethra. Where are they labeled? They got to label it somewhere. Well, here. And they just call it urethra. They don't make a distinction in this case, but that's the penile urethra. They call it spongy urethra because see this purple tissue that's surrounding it? You can barely see that. I guess you can make it bigger, maybe not. Versus this white tissue. The purple tissue is the corpus spongiosum. We label that somewhere? Maybe not. Maybe, yeah, no, they don't show you. It's crossed out. But anyway, that's what they call it that. Again, I talked about that in the lecture. So I guess that's all you can see. You know, all these other things I got scratched out so you can't see that. And then next I have renal structures. So this is like stuff of the kidney. So you look at the kidney model. Here's a kidney model here, and then these kidney models. Between these two, you should be able to see at least the stuff that's not scratched out. The renal pyramids. Let's see. Here it's all this green stuff. See the green, and then right here that it's kind of hard to see. Kind of dark reddish brown. Those are the renal. Here they label it renal medulla. Renal medulla pyramid, same thing. But these little triangular or pyramid-shaped structures, those are the renal pyramids. And the renal papillae are the tips of the pyramids. And you can see like a little tip right there, renal papilla. That's the tip. That's where the urine comes out. And then it comes out, but it's collected by calyces, and you have a major and minor calyx. The major, here there's this, well, they don't label it. Where do they label it? Somewhere here. Minor calyx is what surrounds the actual papilla. And then they must have a major calyx somewhere. Major calyx. A major calyx is where two or more minor calyces converge, and so that's just all that is. It's just collecting the urine. And then the renal pelvis is where all the major calyces come together in the center. So renal pelvis is kind of like where all this green kind of comes together right in the middle, or this space right here, this common space right here, that's the renal pelvis. And then that's it for that. Okay. And then next I have, I wonder if I can do something. Do this. Yeah, I like that a little bit bigger. And it's a little bit better, I think. Now the male reproductive stuff. So you find a male model. Here's one. He has a scrotum, they just don't point it out. And scrotal raphe, they don't point that out. None of this. I talk about all this in lecture and show you. So if you feel cheated, I'm sorry. But if you're in my lecture, you pick up. You'll be introduced to it. But if you're not in my lecture, then I'm sorry. You really get the short end of the stick. But it does show you the testis, testicle, same thing. Right here, but where is it? It's got to be pointed out somewhere, right here, I guess. Testis. That's the male gonad, right there. And the epididymis is this fold on the outside of it, right there. That's where sperm is produced. It's formed in the testis, but it's stored in the epididymis, and it stays in there prior to an ejaculation. So from an ejaculate, if the guy's gonna ejaculate, the sperm are moved from the epididymis, on the way to the penis. Right? And so I lost my spot. Oh, right here. Then the vas deferens or ductus deferens, that's the tube that carries the sperm from the epididymis up. And it kind of embedded in there. It's kind of hard to see. They label it ductus deferens. A little duct comes up, 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 up. Then it goes through the abdominal musculature right here and enters the pelvic cavity. And you can see in the background, there's a little tube comes down, 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 down. It goes around, you know, on the side of the bladder, one from each testicle and one on each side, and it comes around and it disappears into the top of the prostate gland right there. Ductus deferens or vas deferens. It's funny because, you know, if you have a vasectomy, vasectomy means they cut the vas deferens, right? They don't call it a ductectomy, it's a vasectomy. And, but most books refer to it as a ductus deferens, but you can call it vas deferens too. Anyway, vas just means vessel, small vessel, and ductus just means small duct, same thing. And deferens means sperm carrying. And then the seminal vesicles, and there's two of them, a right and left one. This is the, this would be the left one right here, you know, this is the front, this would be on the left side. The right one would be on the other side of the bladder. They produce seminal fluid. Like more than 60% of your semen, your seminal fluid comes from these two glands. And they also have ducts that disappear in the top of the prostate gland. The prostate gland also contributes to the seminal fluid or the ejaculate or the semen. The semen is seminal fluid plus the sperm. I mean, you can separate it out. But anyway, the stuff that's ejaculated. You know, if you have a vasectomy, you cut this, you still ejaculate. You're still going to have about 3 milliliters of ejaculate, but there's not going to be any swimming in it because you cut this. What they do is they cut the vas deferens and tie them back so sperm the cells can't get across. But you're still going to produce fluid from these 3 glands here. Okay. Then the prostate gland, I already showed you that. Here it is intact at the base of the bladder. There, and then look at it sectioned open. Here's sectioned open. You can see the prostate gland. And then you kind of see in the background where the ductus deferens is coming in like this. Now, inside the prostate gland, where the ductus deferens is traveling, is that what's next? Yeah. They don't show you the bulbourethral gland. That's something different. But inside the prostate gland, it's basically a continuation of the ductus deferens in the prostate gland. That's the ejaculatory duct. But the ejaculatory duct also includes contributions from the seminal vesicles on each side. So you have 2 ejaculatory ducts in the prostate gland, one on each side. Okay. There's that. And of course, it's will join, both ejaculatory ducts will join the prostatic urethra right in here in the prostate gland. Okay. And that's it. And then I have penis. It's basically like parts of the penis. And the bulb, the crust, the glands are profuse. They don't show you any of that except for the glands. The glands are the head of the penis. Let me click. Where do they show you? Glands of penis. That's the tip of the penis. Do they show it intact somewhere? Let me see. Yeah, right here. Shows you intact right there. And then they show you, well, they don't label the prepuce. They show you shaft of penis. That's the shaft of the penis. Where am I? Right here. I don't even have shaft listed. Anyway, so what? And corpus spongiosum, corpus cavernosum. These 2 tissues are the erectile tissues. That's what causes an erection. If you look at this guy right here, he has a flaccid penis, not erect, just kind of hanging there. But his implement as an intermittent organ to introduce his gametes into the female's reproductive tract. It ain't gonna work like that. So I had to explain to my little sister and her friend. I mean, I was in graduate school, and I was teaching anatomy and stuff, and my sister, when she was in high school, and all her high school friends, you get to talk about body parts. So their eyes are big. They're always asking me some questions, and I still get those questions from lay people today. Why does a guy's penis have to be erect? Oh my gosh, really? So, well, think about this. Have you ever tried to shoot pool with a rope? It just doesn't work. And so the penis has to be erect. And most a lot of mammals, I won't say all mammals, but a lot of mammals actually have a bone in the penis. It's called an os penis. But humans don't, because we stand upright. And so it would be kind of, you'd be at a disadvantage walking around with a bone in your penis all the time. You're getting away, you wreak havoc, So you don't have a bone in there. So in lieu of a bone in your penis, despite what you might call an erection, there's no bone in it. You have erectile tissue. And what happens in an erectile tissue, during sexual arousal, you got to section it open, like right here. I wish I could make it a little bit bigger. But there's two sets of tissue. The white tissue right here, they have two columns of corpus cavernosa, which means cavernous bodies. And it surrounds, or it's kind of on top of the blue tissue, which is the spongy tissue. But there's blood sinuses in the cavernous bodies. Blood fills these cavities during sexual arousal. And it fills it faster than it can drain. So it pressurizes the penis and causes it to grow in length and rigidity, and makes it work as an intermittent organ. And that's the whole idea, is to penetrate the female's reproductive tract, to deposit the gamete, so the gametes can unite. It's for fertilization. We have internal fertilization. That's what it's all about. Kind of taking the romance out of it, but that's what it's there for. So there's that. Now for the female reproductive system. And right off the bat, unfortunately, I talk about all this in the lecture, but the vulva, the pudendum, they don't label any of that, but that's all the external genitalia, like what you see from the outside. The upskirt view of a female, that's her pudendum or her vulva, and it includes all these structures are structures of the pudendum or the vulva. Pudendal cleft is just simply where the labia majora meet at the midline, that her crack, if you would. That's her pudendal cleft, or her pudendal cleavage, or vulvar cleavage. And I'll identify that because guys don't have that. In lieu of a pudendal cleft, guys have a pudendal raphe, which is something different. Anyway, they don't have a perineal rate. You can't see any of this. So labia majora, labia minora. Let's look at some stuff. What can we see? Well, the labia minora, the larger lips, these are larger folds. Click. Let's see. Use this big fold on the outside. Labia majora. And a little bitty labia minora. Let me see if I got to label it somewhere. Right here. Click. Here's the labia majora and then labia minora. And that's on, you're looking from the left side over to the right side. So these are the right labia. The right labium, singular, would be labium majus and labium minus, okay, of the right ones. And then prepuce. Guys have, did I have to list that? Yeah, I did, but I scratched it. Well, I scratched it out in both, and they don't show it. But a guy's prepuce is his foreskin. Girls don't really have a foreskin. They have a clitoris. You can see they point out clitoris right there, and half of the bulk of the clitoris is internal. A little bitty tip of the clitoris, actually called a glans clitoris, like the head of a penis. It's just like a little miniature penis. And so a lot of the terminology is kind of penis-like, like prepuce, but she doesn't have like a foreskin surrounding her clitoris. uterus, but she has a fold of skin. If you follow the labia minora up, it kind of forms like a little hood. That's what they usually refer to as the prepuce. We'll look at that in the lecture. And then the vagina. Here's the vagina section open. And then see, vaginal orifice is just the opening into the opening right there. And the rugae, well, they show you any of that. And again, I'll just skip. That's all lecture stuff. But here's the vagina. Always, recognize the vagina between the urethra and the rectum. So here's the rectum in the background. So rectum, vagina, urethra, and then also look at it like this too. Rectum and bladder, and then you see the muscular tube there at the vagina. So that's a good place to look at it. And that's it. And then the uterus, scratch. Of course, here's the whole uterus. And cervix, corpus, lower body, and fundament, they don't show you any of that. That's just says uterus, okay? The uterine tube, that's the fallopian tube. And you can kind of see it coming up right here, or here they label it right here. Uterine tube coming up like this. And of course, kind of forms this little, it's like a little umbrella, kind of open it up like funnel. That's do they have that? Fimbria, yes. The fimbria is, means fringes. So the end of the fallopian tube or the uterine tube forms these little like fringes that kind of dangle down and kind of like act like kind of like a funnel, and they're ciliated. And so it's the idea is to create like this current of mucus to help capture the ovulated egg, because the egg, it just pops out of the uterus here, or pops out of the ovary into the pelvic cavity. And so it's out here just hanging out, but it's hopefully going to get swept up in here. And most of the time it does, but sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it just kind of gets lost in the pelvic cavity. And that's not a problem until maybe perhaps if she's inseminated. Sperm are going to be swimming up here, and they swim up the fallopian tube, and they actually swim around inside the pelvic cavity. And then it's possible that a sperm can find a egg that did not make it in the fallopian tube, and it can fertilize it, and usually nothing happens. It just doesn't do anything because it has to be in the uterus. But sometimes that fertilized egg will attach to the outside of the uterus. It might attach to the outside of the rectum or the bladder, and that's an ectopic pregnancy. And so that you have the offspring development outside of the uterus, and usually it has to be terminated, or if it survives, a lot of times they don't survive, and it has to be removed surgically. But anyway, in some cases, have you heard of a pediolith? Because it's a foreign entity. It's growing in there, and so sometimes your body recognizes it as a foreign mass, foreign entity, and so a lot of times your body will encapsulate things in calcium carbonate, and it's treating it like some kind of cyst or tumor or something. And so a pediolith, which literally means a stone baby, and that's sometimes some women will get these pedioliths. It's like an encapsulated ectopic pregnancy out here, and it's just like this stony mass that used to be a baby. Anyway, Google it. All right. So there's all that. And then I talk about this in lecture, the layers of the uterus, but you can't see any of that. Then the ovary, I pointed out there, that's the female's gonad, right? Of course, she has two, and this is the right one. You can't see the broad ligaments, the membrane out there on the outside. The ovarian ligament, that's that other tube that's connected to the ovary. It's not labeled. don't see the blood vessel. Round ligament, they point that out though. That's this thing right here in the front. Yeah, they label it right. I guess that's connected. That's what they're showing you there. It's a round ligament. And all these other ligaments and pouches and things, they don't show you. Sacral, you know, I can point them out. But it looks better like this. That's the posterior cul-de-sac, anterior cul-de-sac, or the vesical uterine and the sacral uterine pouch, but they don't label that. And that's it. And then the breast. And this is the last thing. This is a great model. I mean, this is the best I could find as far as a model of the breast. And our breast models in lab are actually a lot better, but this one will do. Parts of the breast. I mean, you got to know that, right? Another word for breast is mamma. You have two with the E on the end with mammae, all right? And that's why they are the glands that make milk that are in the mammae are called mammary glands. Get it? Okay. The whole thing is not a mammary gland. The whole thing is a breast or a mamma. Just the gland that's in it, the lactiferous gland, see glandular, that's the mammary gland, technically right there. The lactiferous gland, the milk producing gland. And of course, you only would have milk producing glands if you're nursing or, you know, going to be nursing because you're pregnant. Okay. But they're not going to produce milk until after you deliver a baby and have a suckling young, and then you will perpetually produce milk as long as you have a suckling child. Okay. Anyway, but there it is. So the areola, that's the pigmented ring that surrounds the nipple. The nipple itself is also called the papilla. Okay. The little bumps you see right there, they don't label that. That's the areola glands. Those are modified sebaceous glands. And then the mammary glands, or they call it glandular tissue. That's the mammary glands. I just put it in parentheses that. And the lactiferous ducts / sinuses, those are the white tubes coming up from it. That's delivering the milk to the nipple. Okay. And all, well, they don't label it, but all the yellow stuff in the background is adipose. Ta-da. That didn't take long, man. It's not even 30 minutes and we're done it. Okay. So that's it. Next week, you is your practical, and you'll have 25 pictures. And I'm taking these pictures from these slides, these pictures that you see. And you know, everything will be covered up, and I'll just ask you questions. You know, so that's what it is. Now listen to me. Be prepared next week. I mean, you have to Zoom to take your test, and of course you have to take it. Your test is going to be on my courses. Now, it opens at 10 o'clock sharp next week on my courses, but don't Zoom at 10 o'clock. Zoom before. You plan to enter the Zoom meeting 5 or 10 minutes beforehand. So, because, you know, I'll give you some instructions and so forth, you know, before the test. So just make sure and plus you want to make sure that you're connecting. You know, you have a good connection. I have to have a live video feed of your head, your face. I got to be able to see you, right? Et cetera. You know, because if I can't see you and you can't log on, you can't be proctored. If you can't be proctored, you don't get credit for the test. You don't get credit for the test, you're going to fail the course. That's it. You know, I told you that first day of class, and I'm still having people not Zooming. I said, okay, well, you're just not going to get credit for the course. But nothing. Go away. Okay. So make sure you get all your ducks in a row so everything works. Okay. That's next week. Do you guys have any questions about anything? I made you disappear, and I'm not sure if I can make. There you are. I can see you now. There's 8 of you. I can see your names, but do y'all have any questions? No? You're good? So if you come up with a question between now and next week, you know how to get in touch with me. And, you know, I can Zoom with you or email, whatever you want to do. So, but that's it. Okay. Well, good luck. And I will see you guys next week.